kidding. That's not. I just woke up.
We are recording. All right, so first up, our demos. How do y'all want to do this today? Because I know it's a little wonky.
Complicated this week. We did it. Yeah.
I was just thinking about this, honestly.
It's all in one branch, right?
It's all in one branch, but I think there's like multiple parts to explain. So I feel like if everybody wants a chance to speak, like two of us can speak to our actual issues, then maybe two of us can speak to like one person speak to the integration of context, and then another person can also speak to what else did we try to implement?
Yeah, Rebecca and I did a little bit of erroring at the end, so maybe we can speak error and you can speak about how we did that.
Okay, cool. So then who wants to share their screen?
I have it up, if that's easy.
Sure.
Go.
Okay. Where are we here? Share screen. I did this wrong last time.
Let me get my issues up.
Yes. I have, there's up. Is that working?
Yep.
Okay. I was like, oh no, everybody's quiet.
We're just waiting for whoever wants to
Oh,
talk first.
okay.
Go for it.
I can go through our issue first, Rebecca. Actually, I didn't realize you do. I also have it open. If that's okay, I'll have it like a bit split of our issue open too.
Do you want me to stop sharing them?
Yeah, just for a second. Just
Yeah,
so
no
I can
worries.
can we all see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So just to reiterate what issue 6 was that Rebecca and I focused on, the 3 acceptability criteria was that we show an error if the user tries to submit a new item that has the exact same name as an existing item, and that we show an error message if the user tries to submit a new item that has the same name as an existing item, but basically taking into account like capitalization and any punctuation, so that duplicates aren't added, regardless of like any different like character syntax going on with items being added to the database. And then the last criteria was that whatever way that the user initially input it into the database, so whether that be like with hyphens or capitalized letters, that be what is saved into the database. So just to kind of like walk through that functionality, we can create a new list still, and we'll get our token in local storage. And when we go to add a first item, that item gets saved.
Oh.
Sorry, the thing open, okay. So you can still see it, but then if you go to add that same item, say you had like a capital E on it, this item already exists in the database. I love this touch you guys did, that's really cool. And so to explain what's going on there, a lot of our work in regards to just making sure there's no duplicates is in the add items component. So specifically, we created a compare items function. So it takes in one parameter, which is going to be the current item that's being added into the database. And essentially, it goes into the user list that we have saved into context, select a global state, and it filters through that list for the item, where the item name, if you replace all of the capitalized letters and all of the punctuation with this regex expression, replace those with like an empty space, and also reduce everything to lowercase. And it compares that to the current item that's also reduced down to a string with no capitalized letters or punctuation, and it compares those. And so when you're using filter, you get returned an array. So essentially this is returning true if the array has more than one item in it, meaning that that item is already in the database, and false if that array is less than 1. So if that item is not currently existing in the database. And so within this handle submit function that we created either last week or the previous week that is adding into the database, we essentially have this compare items function running as an if statement, kind of like logical operator to control the flow of adding things into the database. So it's pretty much saying that if the compare items function returns false or returns, yeah, so if the compare items returns like matches.length array that's less than 1, then that item will be added into the database with the form data, which is filled out up here. And that item will be added into the database, and then you'll get an alert that says submitted. And then this error handling right here is just to catch whether or not that item is properly added into the database. So if there's any error, you'll get a console log saying that there was an error adding that item into the database, and you'll get to see that error message. And then else, there is a set error here that I think Rebecca and Rachel can speak to.
Yeah.
But also just telling you that this item is already existing in the database.
Sure. Rebecca, did you want to talk about how we did the error handling, or do you want me to?
Why don't you do it and I can talk through context.
Sure. Shane, would you mind just scrolling up a little so I can? So basically we did some of the error handling. We just made 2 states, which is like error, if you look at line 16 and 17. So one is like error, set error. So it starts off false, like we don't have an error. And then we have an error message. And it starts off, it doesn't exist. But basically, so we created an error class in the CSS files where it's just making it red, like the red border and the red text. And then if you scroll down, in the else statement, it's basically changing the state from error from false to true, and then we're changing the error message from null to this item already exists. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, in the input we have on line 76, basically if the error message, right, if the error message exists, it isn't null, then, is this right, Rebecca, with the Pyrenean? I'm still new for me. Then you change the class name to error, put the error message in a paragraph. I mean, like in a P, and that is the error message in the P. And we did the same, and then the input, we changed the class. It's either like if the error on line 69. So basically, if the error exists, then the class name is error, or it's just the empty string. So we did the same logic with the state and in changing the CSS class in the welcome too for when the token doesn't exist, but it's the same, the same kind of error handling.
Yeah. So one thing that Shane and I realized as we were going through, I'll probably share my screen, Shane, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
One thing Shane and I realized as we were going through our regex functions is that we needed to have the user list on the client side already to be able to compare both of those functions. So as it was previously, we were pulling the user list from the database directly into the view list component, but we realized that we also needed it in the add list component. So we decided that we would move the state up a little bit in the application so that we could trickle it down to everything else. So we started with state actually in the app and some of the event handlers being pushed to props, and then realized it started to get a little bit messier than we wanted to. So then during office hours, all of us kind of put our heads together and decided that, and with Allie's help, that it might be more streamlined for us to go ahead and try to implement context. So that's what we ended up doing. So we added a context file here. a context folder and a context file. And so what that is doing is it's handling both the user token once it's set into local storage, and it's also handling the user list that's pulled down for the database, so that both of those things are global to anything that uses context. So you can see here that we have both we're using state for both a token and a user list. We also have our reference to the database here, so that it's not defined in multiple places, and we can just reference it from the context. So we have a use effect so that when this is mounted, it's updating the token. This update token function runs a couple different places. So one on mount, it checks to see if there's a local storage for the token and then sets it to the state. But it's also called by joining a list or adding a list that happens later in the application. So we wanted to break it out so it could be used multiple times. And then once the token is set, we have a listener here to say, if the token is set, go ahead and do a snapshot query of the database to pull all the items that match that user's token, which had kind of been done previously, but we moved into this context statement. And then we're created a context provider that we integrated into the app. So it's wrapping all the other subsequent components so that everything has access to both the user token and the list items. And then in, say, view list, we imported that list context here, and they're just accessing that to map through, displaying all the different items from the database.
Audra, did you want to present our issue?
Sure. Yes, let me just pull this up. Sure. All right. Did you want our branch first, or did you want the big?
I think the
together
big
branch
with context, and then we can just.
There we go. It will switch over in a second, but it has. There you go. So we are just going to move everybody down there. Our acceptance criteria was so that when the user does not already have a token in local storage, on the onboarding screen, a simple form is displayed that allows the user to enter a token. So that was already kind of done for us from last week's acceptance criteria. Then we had entering the token and hitting submit saves the token to local storage, effectively giving both people control over the list, showing an error if the token doesn't exist, and then allowing users to create a new list or try again with the shared token. So if you have absolutely nothing in there, it will scream at you. And then, so it's a correct token, you can join the list, and then it also saves it to your local storage so that you can access it just like you would if you had made it on your own computer. Did you want to explain some of the code part with the list context?
Yeah, so again, we all met together yesterday morning and just wanted to think about the overall architecture of our app with context. So in this, we added, like we imported context, and then, you know, in line 11, we're using it. And then basically on line 29, we're using that update token function. Like if the token exists in the database, because this is just comparing the database, then we're updating it to local storage, which is then pushing us to like the view list of our list. And then it's the same error handling that we did with the add items.
Yeah, it got a lot simpler once we started using context, because we had like all this code, and then once context happened, we were able to condense it, which was pretty cool.
Awesome.
I think the last thing that we also did update is if you go into list context, I think previously we were querying into the database and kind of like saving an instance of what the user list was, but then we realized that it's like use effect every time either a token or an item was updated to have the proper components remount and show like either updated items or an updated list based on that updated token. So on line 26, we kind of implemented the use of on snapshot, which kind of like lets us subscribe to that list in the database. And then as things change, it kind of like passes that down to any component that's using them so that they re-render without us having to like create all of these dependencies and use effects to make sure that the proper components are re-rendering.
I love that. Like, that's what makes Firebase a truly like real-time database, is leveraging the snapshots. A really great find there. And also, holy collaboration. You've all worked together so well this week. This is like, I'm glad this is the demo I came to. It was beautiful and perfectly succinct and like very thoughtful. You all have amazing demos. So good job. Great working together to get this done. Using context is like a big deal. This is gonna like, you're gonna use this a lot if you get a job in like a React space. So really, really great job. What was like a challenge that you had, whether it was like collaboration level or like technical? What's something that you were kind of like, oh, this is hard?
I think the nature of how we initially were working on it, Rebecca and I had made a lot of changes structurally to like the file structure of the app that would impact like Audra and Rachel's work. So I think that was a challenge at first, but I think that us meeting up Thursday during office hours and then yesterday as well, it was like kind of effortless to see the work that they had done in their files and also like work with the files that we were changing and like kind of collaborate in that way to do things in real time. I think that was actually a really good exercise in like pair programming and also like kind of like rectifying like merging conflicts, things like that.
Yes, I love it. That kind of like collaboration, just getting everybody together all at once can save so much wheel spinning and time and effort. It's like when you're like working on a remote team like this, there can be a lot of like back and forth that like you could just totally squash if everybody would just meet together. So this was beautiful and brilliant. Great collaboration.
They were amazing at office hours. Rebecca just sort of grabbed the keyboard and started, you know, typing, and everybody else did a great job of trying to not overwhelm her while she was typing, because we all know how hard that is. So I just thought everybody did a really good job of collaboration on Thursday.
Yay!
It was awesome.
We did a less good job of not overwhelming Shane yesterday.
No, I think overall, honestly, it was like a very helpful, like this was a really good pair programming session, like the past two that we've had. Like I didn't feel overwhelmed. And I felt like I actually did learn a lot about like context and Firebase, like based on you guys' like prior knowledge and us all looking at docs and things together. So I think it was like super productive, honestly.
Yay! Oh, it melts my whole heart to hear it. I am so glad you're having a good collaboration experience.
Indira, did you have anything you wanted to say? Eddie?
I'm actually like writing it on a PR comment, but it was more of like the error is not being cleared. You can use a single variable. You don't need the error and the error message. You can use only like the error message. And then like if there is no error message, basically there's no error. You don't need the additional value to like do those two things. But I really liked how you like went ahead and updated from having the alerts to the errors beneath it, and like, because like that seems closer to me to what you see in a real application. You have like, if you have something invalid, it usually is like right next to your input. So you guys did a great job on adding that.
I love it. This is like, too, if you come across like non-blocking changes on your PRs that like a mentor or one of your developer colleagues suggests, it's a really good time for you to go create a GitHub issue for it, because when you're out in a job search or interviewing, not only do you want to be able to show that you know how to code and you know how to collaborate, but you also want to be able to show that you can create good documentation. And documentation sometimes can be in the form of feature requests or bugs or just tech debt updates that need to be made. So it's a really great opportunity if you see these just like suggestions to go ahead and create a GitHub bug and Just in the same way that your stories each week are created, you'd create one that says like what the problem is, what the solution is, you know, like expected versus, you know, like what's happening right now. And just create kind of like a nice little backlog of issues that you could continue tackling someday if you wanted to, or they can just sit there as like a good example of a time that you created and reported some kind of issue. So
yeah, I gotta say you guys did amazing in that, the collaboration. When I saw that message, I was kind of like, I was like super impressed. Just because I like our place, we try to enforce that as well. We try to push that collaboration. So you guys did an awesome job on that.
Cool. All right, that was great. Phenomenal. And we are now moving on to.
Oh, but can I just clarify? So for the pull request, because it's all in one branch, should Audra and I move over our acceptance criteria and the pull request addresses 5 and 6, and then when we go to merge and close that, because nothing's been. I just want to know what the protocol would be moving forward.
What I've usually done, it's more of like create a pull request against the other one first. So that merges it. Like instead of doing like, you guys merge manually, like your branch into the other one. So what you could have done, it's like move the target branch from like main or master to the other teams. Then you just merge that one and they're both together in one single pull request when they go to main. At this point, I'm not sure what to do, but that's what I would do like moving forward if you have like two that you're gonna merge.
Yeah, for today, like if all of your work is on the single branch now because it's all been merged together or whatever, just make sure you have like one really robust PR with all of the acceptance criteria in it. And I would encourage everybody to go in and do self-review on it, like leave notes on all the different pieces that you worked on, just so that you have, you know, reminders and notes of what you did and what it means and why it's there. So once you all get your reviews in, just start a thread in Slack or something and then tag your mentors in for that final approval.
Pull request. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. That moves us to our learning module. Eddie, are you up for doing a learning module?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Let me share my screen.
Here.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So it's good Shane mentioned pair program because that's what the learning module is about. And I guess you guys had a ton of experience this week in that. So I'm pretty sure you guys, most of the things that are going to be mentioned, you guys probably worked through this past week. So, and this is also, I've really never done a lot of pair programming. And if we do it at work or when we do it at work, it's usually not me. It's usually one of the leads doing it with one of the junior devs. So when I got this topic, I decided to start doing some pair program with some of the junior devs we have. All right. So pair program is 2 developers sit together in front of a computer and take turns writing code using one keyboard. Usually there's a driver and there's a navigator, the driver being the one who controls the keyboard and is responsible for writing the code they need in order to complete the tasks they're assigned. That person will try to verbalize their thinking process as much as possible as they code, and usually thinks low level about the code. The navigator pays close attention to the code the driver is writing, offering guidance, suggestions, alternatives, finding answers to upcoming questions and challenges, and acting as a sounding board for the idea the driver is coming up with. And then thinks about the code in a bird's eye view of the code. So I'm going to throw in a little bit of the experience I've had the past 2 or 3 weeks pair programming. the thinking low level is usually that junior dev, or it doesn't even have to be a junior dev, it could be any dev, writing about the code, usually thinking about the code with that specific scope. So if the task is writing, I don't know, new input fields in a form or something like that, they're only thinking about it usually from that perspective of the task. And usually the driver, which was me at the moment, I'm usually thinking about it, okay, I'm thinking about it in that scope and thinking about the overall project, if that's gonna affect another part of the form or the API or something like that. And then usually that person, we've been doing it, you know, in person. For me, I think that works the best. We were doing it remote as well, but being able to sit there and hear that developer talk and kind of verbalize what they're thinking at the moment and where they're going, and then me just like offering the little tips and trying to point that person in the right direction. That's basically how it works. So then there's pair program remotely as well, and there's tons of amazing tools out there. Usually we just hop on a video call, which is the first step here, and then we just screen share. So that's the first step. Then the driver screen shares their code, while the navigator provides feedback and kind of asks questions to that driver. The driver pushes the code to a remote repo, and the navigator pulls that down to their code locally. And then it'll be like a back and forth swapping between the rows, always starting back at step one. And then the mindset and the attitude, it's per program is like an exercise. It's like sharing your Legos. So I kind of saw my kids or one of my kids playing with another toddler, and it's a perfect example because they're messing around with Legos, and I can see my kid trying to plug in one Lego, connect two Legos together, but he can, and then here comes the other baby, and the other baby's kind of like trying to help him as well, and they're both trying to figure out the problem, like going back and forth. So that's the perfect example. So you always have to keep a beginner's mindset to it. Of course, that driver is gonna have doubts and different possibilities to what they're trying to tackle. So there's always a beginner's mindset to that. It's not about teaching or trying to impress. In my case, the junior dev trying to impress one of the leads. It's more about mentorship and learning. And there's a big opportunity to learn for the junior dev, and even for or for the driver, and even for the navigator. From my perspective, is more of seeing how our code's written and how our code base is set up. So if I get the feeling, if that driver is trying to go through our code base, and I'm watching her, seeing her, she's confused, she doesn't know what's going on in the code, then that's a learning opportunity for me as well, to step back and be like, okay, maybe our code base isn't written too well. Maybe we need to work on writing cleaner code. So it's an opportunity for both parties to learn. And then that driver is always trying to seek agreement before proceeding. So that person or that developer is gonna ask the question before they try to commit something or trying to make a change, and make sure they're heading on the right path. And then from the navigator's perspective is always ask questions, but don't tell or don't give them the answer. So my experience in the past 2 weeks, it was more, I didn't give the person the answer, but I would always kind of guide them or ask them a question, or make them, if they were heading in the wrong direction, or even if they were heading in the right direction, trying to give them a question to kind of test them and make them think about their code they're writing or which direction they're going. All right, and then there's TLC pairing, things to consider when pairing with your fellow cohort participant. You're both in it for learning, so both of you have opportunity to grow. Always watch or see your pairing partner. Kind of their expression in their face could tell a lot. Kind of like I said with the dev I was pair programming with, watching their facial expression when they were going through the code helped me know where that person was at, but also be able to tell if our code base was written well as well. Dialogue is the key, voice ideas, thoughts, and switch roles. And in my experience, we did that a lot. I would kind of like switch in and write some code and have that person guide me. So they kind of say, if you want to learn something, teaching is the best thing. So it works both ways. You might get stuck or frustrated. So ask the questions. If you're doing it on here, just throw the questions up in Slack, and you guys pretty much do that all the time. But if you're getting stuck and frustrated, don't get that sort of, and I know I get this a lot, imposter syndrome. You know, at one point you feel like you want to quit, or it's not for you, or you think this task wasn't like the best for you. So it's gonna happen. Just stick with it, ask questions. There's always a million ways to do different things, so everybody has different ideas and different opinions and different routes. So yeah, just throw your questions out there. And it also could be tiring, switching roles and thinking out loud. I know a few times we had to kind of stop. I don't know, we took time, put up a YouTube video of something funny, or got on, we have a water cooler chat at work. So we just started throwing up random conversations, kind of to get out of that process and then come back to it and then get back to work. And then there's a couple of resources here provided. How to pair program, the wrong way to do it, the power of pair programming. There's coding tools. I know VS Code, Atom if you're using Atom. I believe PHP Storm or JetBrains tools have them as well. There's CodePen, if you guys haven't used CodePen, there's a code sharing tool on there. And there's always just jumping on a video call and sharing your code. And then program so far with each other. How's it gone? Pros and cons, anything you've learned?
Thoughts, anyone? How's it been going?
I think it's been going pretty well. I mean, I definitely have learned something from each person that I've pair programmed with. I mean, there's definitely stuff I've picked up, even things that I wouldn't expect. Like when I was watching Audra code the first week, I don't know if you've seen her in VS Code, but she's doing like some magic over there that I'm just like, what did you just do right now? Like, how did you just generate like a whole form from 3 words? It was amazing. And so then she's like, oh, you can do this, this, and this. And so I went and watched some videos, and I'm like, this is going to change my world right now. So I mean, even stuff down to that, to just seeing like how people use your editor. It's been super helpful. And I know that for me personally, it's been a pretty good window into one of my shortcomings, is that I'm not specific enough in the language that I'm using to describe code to make it easily understandable by someone remotely. And so it's definitely pointed out that that's something that I need to work on, is just getting better about being more specific about how I'm describing code and how it's working, and a little bit less generic.
I love that you brought that up. That's one of my favorite pieces of pair programming is like learning how to talk about your code. And you all did an incredible job during your demos. So I was like super shocked. But a lot of people come to Collab Lab never having like had to say a lot of these things out loud, and like watching people grow through the program and learn like how to explain context, which can be a very complex situation to explain, is like incredible and very heartwarming to see. So I'm glad you experienced that. And it's kind of like also how you were saying, like just picking up little nuggets of wisdom here and there. This learning how to be an amazing developer is the same as learning how to be a human in general. And I loved Eddie's like comparing it to our kids, because it's the same way. Like you don't grow up to be a full human doing it alone by yourself. You do it surrounded by other people from whom you learn new things and who you pick up like different mannerisms and stuff. So if you pair program with enough people, you can pick and choose the things that you really like and you think really make you efficient and help you grow, and apply those and become the best version of you, thanks to all the people you surrounded yourself with and worked with. So amazing insight.
I think I would just add to Rebecca's comment. Like, I feel like pair programming with you this weekend was like actually very effortless for me. And that's honestly why I had asked you like, how long have you been coding? Because there were certain things directionally that we were doing that I felt like you were picking up on and explaining to me very well in terms of like why we were putting things somewhere, or like really mainly in relation to like component like lifecycle methods. I felt like you were like giving me that information in a way that like actually helped me understand it better. So I would say that just in my experience with it, you were explaining things very well for me in a way that I understood.
Thanks, Shane. One thing that I picked up from you that I was just like, oh, this makes so much sense, is to use line numbers when you're trying to direct someone in the code. You did that really well, and it gets me exactly where I need to go. And I'm like, why haven't I been doing this? This is amazing.
Yeah, I would say like pair programming, and actually like now with my team, I'm gonna have like the junior devs do it at least once every week during their task, regardless if they're like speeding through the task and getting it done. I think what I learned from it, and like I said, I've really never done it before. It was usually one of the leads and stuff like that, but just that dev or both of us taking a step back and kind of going through the flow of the task, like starting not from, oh, let's just put in this, functionality here. It's like, hey, let's take it even further back and say, okay, if I'm a user, the first thing I'm coming is here. I'm doing step A, I'm doing step B, and now here's where we're gonna go either one way or the other way, and then what's gonna happen if we go this way or that way, or if the user does this or whatever the case may be. So I think just that helps you improve in your code. It helps you take that not just from your scope of the task, but the overall scope of the project, and think about the project in the whole, the long term of the project, the long term of your code, because you don't just write code for yourself, right? You write it for your team member, or the next person coming in, or the new developer coming in. So, I think that's one of the biggest things you take from it as well.
How do you all think that you've done, like, tactically pair programming? Have you stuck pretty well to what the driver and navigator were defined as here, where the driver is really like in the code, writing the characters and thinking like more technical, like lower level about it, and the navigator is more like thinking higher level and giving guidance and looking things up? Or have you done some different things? There's no like right way to do this. So I'm curious to hear how you've been kind of splitting those responsibilities.
I feel like for me, in our experience with like whoever was the driver or like typing in the code, I feel like the emphasis was on like making sure that I was getting everything right in terms of like what people were inputting, and also making sure that like everyone's voices were heard. Like if someone had a suggestion, just like trying that out, whether or not, it turned into something that ended up in the code. But I do think like outside of that, once you kind of like got a handle on that, I still felt very involved in like looking for answers to like some of the things that we were going through. So like looking up documentation as well. But I do feel that when I wasn't the one typing, it was just a bit easier to see like, okay, this might be something that like we're trying to use, but we don't fully understand. So let me like look through docs and like Stack Overflow to maybe give us some more insight.
I love that. You get such a different experience depending on what role you're in. And so that's why like in these slides, we mentioned like, be sure to switch a lot. Like you gain such valuable insight being a navigator and being a driver that you don't get from the other role. So, you know, whether it's like you have 2 pairing sessions and you drive one and navigate the other, or like within 1 pairing session, you know, you're like, as soon as we get this task done, we'll switch, or after 10 minutes, we'll switch or something. Just being sure to kind of get your hands on both of those can be such a good experience for you and can really help like move your app forward in a more well-rounded way rather than if you're taking on the same role all the time. So, but it sounds like you all have done a fantastic job of that already.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to issues? Dira?
Yep. Am I sharing a screen? No. Wait, what am I sharing?
That's good. We can see the issues.
Okay. I'm just like, this thing goes small and I wasn't sure what I was sharing. Okay, so let me try to get back the chat. And I'm not sure where it went. Okay, so we're gonna be working on issues 7 and 8 this week. Issue 7, it's as a user, I wanna see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty to help me get oriented to how the app works. And the acceptance criteria is that the list view, when there are no items to display, should show a prompt, like a button, for the user to add their first item. And it's not clear here, but like the idea is once you click on the button, you go to the add items view. The second issue is, as a user, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased so the app can learn how often I buy different items. The acceptance criteria is that the user is going to be able to tap a checkbox or similar UI element to mark an item in the list as purchased, and the item should be shown as checked for 24 hours after the purchase is made. We assume that a user does not need to buy the item again for at least 1 day. And then after the 24 hours, it's unchecked again. So the pairs for this week, we have Shane and Rachel, and Rebecca and Audra. Does anyone have a preference on which issue they want? We need someone to pick an issue.
You were so excited last week.
Yeah. Actually, whoever picked last week doesn't get to pick this week. So Rebecca or Shane?
I think what's like throwing everyone up is that we like worked on the last 2 together. So it's like either or. I guess the 8, the one that's here now, that's cool.
Okay. So no.
I always do that.
So Shane. Half Rachel.
So on the Rachel Rebecca thing, I thought this was funny. Rachel, I got a call from my boss the other day and he's like, so I have a really weird question. Have you ever gone by Rachel on any like legal documents? And I'm like, no, why? And he's like, well, we've been submitting all your stuff to the, your information to the tax offices or the state as Rachel. And I was like, oh, well, my tax information at the state is not my name. I was like, that's amazing.
Ow.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to do with that.
Like, it's a constant problem to be called Rachel. Well, not like it's happened a lot throughout my life, but I didn't imagine that it would happen in an official capacity. I'm like, this could actually be a nightmare.
No, that could. Yeah, I told my family almost name me Rebecca, but I'm always called Rebecca as well.
Yes. All right. Any questions on the issues? Anybody? Are we all set there? Office hours this week is Stacy.
Me?
Yeah.
I totally forgot I signed up for those. Okay, cool. Let's do.
So we've been doing office hours at our time, 5 o'clock on Thursdays.
Thursdays, 5 o'clock. Okay. I have kids on Thursdays. How about Wednesday or Friday?
That's
What
great for
time?
me because Thursday's my birthday.
Oh. Well, happy birthday.
Okay, what do y'all think? Wednesday or Friday?
Wednesday would be dope for me.
Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Great. I was like, not even.
5 Pacific, 8 Central still work?
Mm-hmm.
Not 8 Central, 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern.
Okay, 5 Pacific. Okay. Wednesday, 5 Pacific to 6 Pacific, the 28th of October. I will see you all then. I haven't been following along with your app's progress, so I'll still be able to help you. It'll be fine.
One thing that Rachel and I kind of talked about as we were doing some of the error handling yesterday is that we realized there's probably a better way to do it than we have been doing it. And we thought maybe that could be a good topic for office hours if we don't have something else, is just to talk about kind of the methodology for how error handling happens, and is there a better way to do it than what we've already implemented.
And Indira responded to that a little bit. I don't know if you saw, she wrote in the Slack post about like banners and things coming from the back end versus like things coming from the front end, and kind of your philosophy on error handling a little bit, which was helpful to see.
Oh, awesome. I missed that. I'll have to go back and check it out.
Yeah, I think what you did is great for that type of error handling. It's just like you didn't need the 2 variables.
Right, we didn't need the Tuesdays. I think we were just kind of messing around, and then we were like, what about this? And then we realized we needed a message as well. So I think we changed it.
Yeah, but other than that, that's kind of what I've done in the past for error handling. That same use an error message, manage it at the state, and since they're like in the page, they're part of your page. That's why I do it like that, and not like at a context level. Yeah.
Cool.
Are there any other questions? Comments? Are we good?
Thank you all for letting me come crash your sink. You did an incredible job, and I love seeing this collaboration.
All right. Well, if that's everything, there are no more questions or comments. We will say goodbye and have a good week, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.